Chinese leader Xi Jinping has defended China's record to the top UN human rights official. This while criticizing those countries that he said lecture others on human rights and politicize the issue. He told visiting UN Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet that China has embarked on a path of human rights development and suits its own national conditions. The two spoke on video phone. Ms. Bachelet is on a 6-day visit to China that includes Xinjiang, a region where Chinese governments have been accused of human rights violations. Her trip has been criticized by the U.S. and others who think that China will use it for propaganda purposes. With us now to discuss the visit is Dr. Charles Burton, an expert on China and senior fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. Sir, welcome back to Forum Daily.
It's good to speak with you again.
So what is the UN Human Rights Chief looking to accomplish with this trip to China?
Well, certainly the UN Human Rights Chief has been under a lot of pressure to try to come to terms with the very serious allegations of genocide committed by the government of China against the Uyghur ethnic minority. And so, she's been negotiating to visit China for quite some time. It seems that she will be able to travel to China, but the issue really is, will she see anything of the evidence of genocide, or will her trip be so carefully vetted that she will only see facilities which are not reflective of the reality on the ground? And certainly the Chinese government has already said that because of the COVID-19 pandemic, she will be kept in what they refer to as a bubble, which means that there will be no foreign journalists accompanying her, and she will likely have no spontaneous contact with anybody in China while she's there.
And we know China's president is saying that other countries are politicizing human rights issues. So what does China's president mean by that?
Well, China rejects the idea of universal values and clearly doesn't want to be compliant with the international norms of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that should be extending to Chinese citizens entitlements to freedom of expression and freedom of choice of their political leaders and independent judiciary. Under the Chinese Communist Party's rule, none of these are allowed for Chinese people. So China is very sensitive on the issue of human rights because they're not prepared to extend any human rights to their population. And so this becomes an issue in our relations, because we expect that human rights is a universal norm that should be universally respected, regardless of where the humans are, that they should all be given the entitlements of citizenship. So China on the one hand claims that they maintain human rights in a Chinese way, but on the other hand, there's nothing about the Chinese Communist Party's rule which is anyway consistent with human rights doctrine as we understand it.
And staying on the topic of human rights, we know this trip would include a visit to the Xinjiang region. So tell our viewers, we just have about 2 minutes, so really briefly, can you tell us about the situation there with the Uyghur minorities?
Well, the Uyghurs are about 11 million people living in the northwestern part of the People's Republic of China, who speak a language that is similar to Turkish, and they look like Turkish people. They don't look like Chinese at all. The Chinese government wants to assimilate them to Han Chinese norms, to learn Mandarin Chinese, and to support China's rise to power led by the Han minority. Many Uyghurs would prefer to be ruled by their own people in their own area, which they refer to as East Turkestan. And the Chinese government is therefore trying to eliminate the Uyghur culture and language and religious practice to try and suppress this separatist tendency and dissatisfaction of the Uyghurs with Chinese rule from Beijing.
All right. Well, Dr. Burton, just about 30 seconds left here, but what do you expect from this trip?
Well, I'm not optimistic that the UN chief will come back with any kind of meaningful report on the situation of the Uyghurs, but let's see what she says when she returns to the UN, and hopefully we'll make some progress in understanding exactly what China's doing in those regions. And it's pretty clear that it amounts to genocide under the UN Genocide Convention.
We'll definitely have to keep our eyes out for that. Dr. Burton, thank you again for joining us today on Forum Daily.
Very good to speak with you.
Stay with us. Up next, we've got more news from around the world. More details have been released about the gunman involved in an elementary school shooting in Texas. The UN reports that over 1 million children in Afghanistan are likely to face severe malnutrition this year. And Ukraine's president suggests a first step to negotiating an end to the war. These stories and more coming up next.